Wells' bombshell report tonight. Does it reveal new witnesses? And because of the new timeline report, is there a timeline shift in what happened the afternoon and evening? Nolan Wells seemingly disappears. His body found washed up at Horn Island.
Some crimes make headlines. Others leave behind questions that refuse to die. Welcome to True Crime Exposure, where we uncover the evidence, examine the courtroom moments, and piece together the stories that continue to captivate the world. Every detail matters. Every decision has consequences. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a review if you enjoy deep dive investigative content. What's a case you think deserves a second look? Let us know in the comments below. If you're ready to look beyond the headlines, let's begin. July 4th, 2024. Horn Island, Mississippi, a sun-drenched barrier island sanctuary off the Gulf Coast, where hundreds of young people gathered to celebrate under the open sky. Among the emerald waters and buzzing party boats, 18-year-old Nolan Wells was enjoying the midsummer heat with a group of friends. Music echoed across the waves, boats bumped against one another in the shallow anchorages, and the atmosphere felt like an endless summer afternoon. But as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the celebration took a dark, irreversible turn. 3 boats carrying Nolan's friend group prepared to head back toward the mainland. When they reached the dock hours later, one seat was empty. Nolan was gone. 2 agonizing days later, on July 6th, Nolan's body was recovered along the island's desolate shoreline. Almost instantly, an official narrative took shape, suggesting an accidental drowning fueled by holiday drinking. Yet, before the first police report was even finalized, that narrative began to crack. 3 major claims, put forward by local authorities, circulating media reports, and witnesses on the water, began to rapidly unravel under the weight of conflicting timelines, digital footprints, and physical evidence that simply refused to align. Now, with the FBI stepping in and releasing a brand new statement, the entire foundation of this investigation has been thrown into chaos. What was originally presented as a tragic holiday accident has transformed into a high-stakes, deeply convoluted legal battle where every piece of evidence holds a double meaning, and the line between an unfortunate catastrophe and something far more sinister has completely blurred. To understand how a warm holiday afternoon turned into a nightmare of unanswered questions, you have to look at who Nolan Wells was before his name became a trending headline. At 18 years old, Nolan was a young man stepping into the prime of his life, remembered by those who knew him best as a bright, God-fearing, and deeply empathetic presence. He was the kind of person who naturally drew people in, never excluding anyone, often acting as the biggest cheerleader for friends and strangers alike. He had big dreams, a loving family, and a wide circle of peers who shared his enthusiasm for the future. On July 4th, as he joined his friends on a 3-boat excursion to Horn Island, there was no reason to suspect that this day would mark the end of his story. Yet beneath the vibrant surface of that midsummer boat trip lay subtle dynamics, hidden tensions, and a complex network of relationships. The group wasn't made up of just a few close companions. Over 20 young adults were spread across 3 separate vessels, tied together by overlapping friendships, acquaintance circles, and casual holiday plans. In an environment like Horn Island on the 4th of July, packed with 300 to 400 people, dozens of anchored boats, and continuous music, identifying who was keeping track of whom became nearly impossible. As the afternoon progressed, small details began to accumulate that would later become critical points of contention. Some witnesses would later claim that Nolan was in high spirits, engaging in deep conversations about his college plans with adults and coaches on the island, appearing completely coherent and relaxed around 3 o'clock. Others, however, would later frame the narrative very differently, describing a scene of heavy drinking and chaotic summer partying. The biggest split in the story centers on the moment the boats prepared to return home. According to initial statements made by members of the friend group, the vessel Nolan had been riding on suffered a sudden mechanical failure, a broken bilge pump that caused the boat to take on water rapidly. As panic set in and the crew scrambled to drain the rising water, a decision was made. The group claimed Nolan voluntarily chose to stay behind on the island to spend more time with a young woman he had just met, intending to catch a ride back inland later with a different group. But that claim immediately hit a wall. When the girl in question was asked about that timeline, her account contradicted the friends entirely, stating plainly that Nolan had left with his group, or was supposed to have left with them, and had not stayed behind with her. Furthermore, when the boats finally made their desperate run back to the mainland, Nolan's cell phone did not remain on the island with him. It stayed on board one of the departing vessels, traveling back to shore without its owner. In a world driven by continuous digital connection, an 18-year-old willingly separating from his phone on a crowded barrier island raised immediate red flags. Was it a simple oversight amidst the chaos of a sinking boat, or was it the first visible crack in a story constructed after the fact? As the sun set over the Gulf, Nolan Wells was left alone on the island, and the clock began ticking toward a mystery that would soon grip the entire nation. As the days following Nolan's disappearance turned into weeks, the silence from official channels was filled by a deafening storm of digital rumors, strange inconsistencies, and warning signs that simply could not be ignored. What began as a tragic missing persons search quickly evolved into a maze of unsettling anomalies. First came the distress call to sea tow, the private marine assistance service contacted by the boat's crew as they headed back to the mainland. While officials released the initial audio, an enhanced version soon went viral across social media, purporting to capture frantic background voices shouting cryptic phrases beneath the static. Cyber forensic analysts quickly stepped in to examine the digital fingerprint of the viral audio, revealing that the enhanced recording ran 20 seconds longer than the original file released by the state, raising immediate questions about whether the public was reacting to genuine evidence or a manipulated narrative designed to inflame tensions. Yet, even as unverified clips flooded comment sections, genuine red flags continued to mount. Witnesses who had been on Horn Island that afternoon began scrubbing their social media profiles, deleting photos, videos, and location check-ins from July 4th. Content that had been visible just hours after Nolan was reported missing suddenly vanished. The digital footprint of an afternoon spent among hundreds of people was being quietly erased, leaving investigators and Nolan's family to piece together a fragmented timeline. Then came the escalating atmosphere of fear and hostility. Online speculation began targeting specific members of the friend group, driving public outrage to a dangerous fever pitch. In one startling development, federal agents arrested a man after death threats were directed at the family of one of the teens on the boat, a local chancery judge whose stepson had been among the last people to see Nolan alive. The speed with which federal authorities tracked down and jailed the individual behind those threats stood in stark contrast to the grueling, slow-moving investigation into Nolan's actual death, deepening the public skepticism and leaving a community utterly divided. Every clue seemed to carry two opposing explanations. A private boat service was framed by internet sleuths as a cover-up, while legal representatives for the teens mounted public defenses on national television, claiming that at least two independent witnesses saw Nolan alive on the island an hour and a half after the boats had already departed. But with those witnesses remaining anonymous and no official corroboration on the record, the gap between what was being claimed and what could actually be proven grew wider by the day, setting the stage for a tragic reveal that no one was truly prepared for. On the morning of July 6th, 2 days after he vanished into the midsummer heat of Horn Island, the agonizing wait came to a devastating end. A United States Park Service ranger patrolling the island's shoreline spotted a figure lying in the shallow surf along the northwestern tip of the beach. It was Nolan Wells, the vibrant 18-year-old college football player, a young athlete in peak physical condition, was pronounced dead at the scene. He had gone into the water wearing his swimwear, but his final moments remained shrouded in absolute silence. Local law enforcement from the Jackson County Sheriff's Department quickly leaned toward a devastatingly simple conclusion: an accidental drowning. They pointed to the hundreds of holiday revelers, the open water, and reports suggesting alcohol consumption as a clear recipe for a tragic accident. But almost immediately, that official narrative collided head-on with the physical reality of the recovery scene. Search veterans and marine experts raised an immediate red flag regarding the body's timeline. In the July heat of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, where water temperatures hovered in the upper 80s, a drowning victim's body typically surfaces within 24 hours due to rapid natural processes. Yet Nolan had gone missing on July 4th in an area crowded with 300 to 400 people, and his body did not surface on July 5th despite intensive boat searches led by volunteers and family members. It wasn't until the morning of July 6th that he appeared along the shore, a delay that led search teams and independent investigators to question whether Nolan had entered the water where he was found, or if his body had been subject to forces that standard drowning models simply couldn't account for. The shock deepened when the state medical examiner performed the initial autopsy on July 7th. Instead of providing immediate clarity, the state kept its findings strictly under wraps, citing pending toxicology reports. But for Nolan's parents, waiting in silence was not an option. Fearing that vital clues were being overlooked, they retained renowned civil rights attorney Ben Crump and commissioned a renowned independent forensic pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, to perform a second, private autopsy. When Dr. Mitchell examined Nolan's body, he uncovered a detail that altered the entire narrative. Deep beneath the skin, along the occipital bone at the lower back of Nolan's head, was a distinct 12 by 8 centimeter area of deep red subcutaneous hemorrhaging. It wasn't surface bruising, nor was it post-mortem blood pooling, which settles at the lowest point of a body. It was a targeted, localized area of internal bleeding beneath the scalp, a finding that strongly suggested a localized impact or blow to the back of the head prior to death. Even more disturbing was what the independent examination could not inspect. When the family's pathologist received the body, crucial anatomical structures, specifically the anterior neck tissue and the throat, had been removed and retained by the state medical examiner during the initial exam. While retaining organs for microscopic testing is standard procedure, retaining the entire interior neck structure left the independent team unable to evaluate the throat for signs of manual strangulation or soft tissue trauma. The physical evidence presented a chilling paradox. Official channels maintained that there was no immediate proof of foul play, while independent medical findings pointed directly to unexplained head trauma and missing physical evidence. An 18-year-old athlete who knew how to swim had ended up dead in the shallow waters of a barrier island, leaving behind a body that held far more questions than answers. The cover-up and the investigation that followed were defined by a relentless series of digital trails, legal maneuvers, and forensic dead ends. As state authorities maintained their distance, the battle shifted from the quiet shores of Horn Island to courtrooms, crime labs, and corporate servers. The fundamental conflict sat squarely on a paradox. While local law enforcement leaned toward accidental drowning, the actions taken behind closed doors pointed to a high-stakes, meticulously calculated effort to control the narrative. Forensic verification became the primary battleground. In the weeks after Nolan's body was recovered, it was revealed that his phone, which had returned to the mainland without him on one of the friend group's boats, had passed through multiple hands before reaching his family. Suspecting that digital evidence had been altered or wiped, Christine Onsley's legal team filed formal court-backed subpoenas in Jackson County Chancery Court against 5 major technology platforms: Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Life 360. They sought account histories, location logs, direct messages, and deleted media from the day Nolan vanished. While platforms like Life 360 held precise GPS records capable of pinpointing phone movements, and Snapchat possessed server-side data that could reveal deleted files, end-to-end encrypted services like WhatsApp presented near-impenetrable walls. Simultaneously, the investigation into the emergency CTO dispatch call widened. To counter viral speculation surrounding the recording, the legal team retained top-tier forensic audio engineers to analyze the raw, unedited audio files directly obtained from authorities, seeking to isolate background frequencies and confirm whether human voices were speaking beneath the noise of the damaged vessel's engine. At the same time, oceanographic engineers were brought in to conduct tide-end current mapping, attempting to determine if a body entering the water near the island's northern tip could naturally wash ashore, where Nolan was found 2 days later without severe marine impact. Yet, despite these exhaustive efforts, state officials took an unprecedented step that effectively locked the truth behind closed doors. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office completed the official state autopsy report. But rather than releasing the findings to the public or sharing the complete medical records with the family's independent pathologist, prosecutors announced that the entire file would be sealed and presented directly to a Mississippi grand jury. In Jackson County, handing an autopsy over to a grand jury without public release is highly unusual unless prosecutors believe criminal charges may be on the table, or unless they are preparing to let a secret panel of citizens determine whether a crime occurred at all. As federal agents from the FBI's Safe Streets Task Force stepped in to trace IP addresses, track digital footprints, and investigate the flood of interstate threats surrounding the case, the physical evidence remained trapped in a legal vacuum. The state held the throat tissue, the official autopsy sat under court seal, and the digital logs remained buried inside corporate servers. Every attempt to piece together Nolan's final hours met a wall of red tape, leaving a grieving family to conduct their own parallel investigation, while official justice moved silently in the shadows. When an investigation moves from the open coastline into the closed corridors of the judicial system, the search for truth often becomes a battle of procedure. For Nolan Wells' family, the legal arena presented an entirely new set of obstacles. Instead of open press conferences or transparent disclosures, the state of Mississippi chose a path shrouded in legal secrecy, taking the completed autopsy report and the entire case filed directly to a Jackson County grand jury. Under Mississippi law, grand jury proceedings are entirely secret. Witnesses are called to testify behind closed doors without defense attorneys or press present, and no transcripts are made available to the public. For local legal experts, presenting a completed autopsy to a grand jury in an unclassified death investigation was a significant pivot. Typically, if an autopsy clearly indicates a simple, unsuspicious accidental drowning, a prosecutor does not require a grand jury to evaluate the medical findings. The move signaled that prosecutors were either preparing potential criminal indictments for charges ranging from reckless endangerment to manslaughter, or using the grand jury process to thoroughly vet conflicting witness accounts before making a final charging decision. As the grand jury convened, a stark divide emerged between the two parallel investigations. On one side, state prosecutors possessed the complete, finalized state autopsy report, official toxicology findings, and the retained interior throat structures. On the other side, the family's legal team, led by attorney Ben Crump, was forced to press forward without ever seeing the state's full medical documentation. Dr. Roger Mitchell's independent findings, which highlighted the 12 by 8 centimeter area of subcutaneous hemorrhaging on Nolan's scalp, could not be formally weighed alongside the state's official conclusions inside that sealed room unless prosecutors chose to introduce them. Outside the grand jury room, legal maneuvers intensified. Defense attorneys representing members of the Friend Group launched a concerted effort on national news outlets to counter the public narrative. They maintained that their clients had cooperated fully with law enforcement from day one, surrendering personal devices, providing voluntary statements, and allowing inspections of their vessels without requiring search warrants. They emphasized that no member of the group had been named as a suspect or person of interest by law enforcement, framing the ongoing legal push as an aggressive civil litigation strategy rather than a criminal pursuit. Yet, as subpoenas for platform data from Meta, Snapchat, and Life 360 dragged through corporate legal reviews, the legal timeline began to stretch from weeks into months. The judicial system was moving at its own deliberate, unyielding pace, a stark contrast to the immediate, emotional urgency felt by those left behind. In the absence of formal criminal indictments, the court of public opinion remained the only arena where every piece of evidence was aggressively tried, argued, and re-examined daily. Beyond the court filings, forensic reports, and legal debates lies the heavy, unvarnished human cost of a tragedy that shattered a family and shook an entire community. For Nolan Wells' parents, Christine and Elmore, the passage of time brought no relief, only a relentless struggle to seek answers while navigating the unimaginable pain of losing their son. Every morning presented a harsh new reality, waking up to an empty room and a timeline that still refused to make sense. Instead of being granted the quiet space to grieve, Nolan's family found themselves forced onto a high-stakes national stage, defending their son's memory while pushing for basic transparency. Christine, a dedicated nurse practitioner, had to endure bad-faith online attacks and targeted attempts to derail her professional reputation simply for demanding a thorough investigation. Elmore spoke publicly of the agonizing weight every parent faces when the person they raised to be kind, welcoming, and compassionate is suddenly gone, leaving behind a silence that no headline could ever fill. The community, too, was left deeply fractured. What should have been a unified search for truth devolved into division, distrust, and widespread hostility on social media. Friends, partygoers, local residents, and onlookers were caught in the fallout of a case where unanswered questions created room for suspicion to thrive. Amidst the noise of viral commentary and wild theories, the human reality at the center of the story was often lost. An 18-year-old young man with a bright future was dead, and two parents were left standing at a podium, begging anyone with real information to step forward so they could finally lay their son to rest with complete peace of mind. When standard timelines break down, when physical evidence is retained behind closed doors, and when those who were there offer accounts that fail to align, where does the boundary between reasonable doubt and a cover-up truly lie? And if this were your child, sitting at the center of a national mystery with answers just out of reach, how far would you go to ensure the truth finally came to light? If today's exposure brought you closer to the details of this unresolved case, please take a moment to hit the like button and share this video to help keep Nolan's story active. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Exposure and click the notification bell so you never miss an in-depth, fact-based breakdown of America's most compelling cases. Drop your thoughts and honest theories in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next exposure.